What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson here at Southeastern 14, sponsored by our good friends at Bet Online. Let's talk about them, as Bet Online is your number one source for the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today. That's Bet Online to get in on the action. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's all caps BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, we are recording at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Friday, May 24th. Happy Memorial Weekend to all. To you, Mr. Greeson, how we doing?
Tremendous. Memorial Day is a special time for us because not only do we celebrate those who've paid the ultimate sacrifice for the tremendous freedoms that we enjoy, but my daughter has a Memorial Day birthday, and so we always celebrate on that weekend. She'll be 14. So prayers are accepted as we speed into teenagedom with a father-daughter relationship.
And the door will be knocking very soon, but we won't get into it.
I'll be sitting here cleaning this gun. I'll be okay.
All right. I like to say that no news is good news this time of year for a college football program, now that we're seemingly past all the portal stuff. And my Florida Gators were not only in the news Monday, or it was Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday for a player getting arrested for hitting a car and then going 150 miles an hour with his lights off to elude police. But Tuesday, Jaden Rashada filed a lawsuit not against the University of Florida, but against Billy Napier and Hugh Hathcock, our top booster, and a former staffer who I guess was the NIL guy. And I wrote about it on Major Wager if you want to check it out. And your thoughts?
Well, I wrote about it too at 5 at 10, my morning column at timesfreepress.com. And if yesterday hadn't happened with the NCAA vote, and we'll talk about that in a moment, this would be potentially groundbreaking news because the lawsuit targets the coach.
Yeah.
And the booster, not the school.
Right.
And in that regard, those promises were made. And what I read, Brian, a contract was signed. And not only, I mean, we know that verbal contracts can be upheld in a court of law. And the details and the numbers about how Miami was going to pay this kid more than $9 million to go there, and he originally committed there. Florida upped the ante, which is what used to be what got SMU the death penalty, and now in college football, that's called Tuesday. So it's the operating procedure of the modern day. But reading the details that Rashada and his family have tossed out there, it really sounds like he got the rug pulled out from under him by the Florida program. Now, say what you want, that no unproven college quarterback should be worth $13 million. But if that's what you offer, and then you're going back on your offer, especially if there's a contract, I think this kid may have a lawsuit. And those ramifications potentially before last night were game-changing for what the whole NIL process could have been or should have been or would have been. But I think biggest picture, if I'm a Florida Gator fan, I'm hoping the athletic department is calling Matlock and Jack McCoy and my cousin Vinny and every attorney you can possibly think of to figure out, is this enough to fire Billy Napier for cause? Because we owe him $25 million on a buyout, and if we just pay this kid half that, if we settle the lawsuit for half that, we come out $19 million to the good, and we get to go find somebody to fix this mother bleeper.
I like all of that. Now, I will say, because I've seen some tweets from some lawyer Gators, the contract actually had in writing that either party could cancel it or void it at any time.
Okay.
So I don't know that there's a lot of merit with the lawsuit, but
in terms of the verbal stuff, nobody's refuting, including I haven't heard Billy talk about it, which he won't until he's forced to, and that may not be till they get to SEC Media Days. But Rashada's father apparently says Billy's told him, "I'll pay you $1 million when you sign." And then
we're not wiring it today because he's in the friendly skies. Hugh Hathcock is on an airplane. And then the staffer was saying, look, if you don't sign today, we're pulling the offer and the scholarship, the contract. And so.
And one thing before we move on to the NCAA decision, which was the biggest news of the week, and I can make an argument that it was the biggest news in college sports since Title IX. What a different perception winning has in terms of, think of it this way. What Harbaugh in Michigan did was so much more egregious in terms of coaching ethics and breaking the rules. And every Michigan fan I know, and I know a bunch of them actually, just galvanized around him to the point of everybody's out to get us. This is just a witch hunt. And you know why? Harbaugh wins. Billy Napier is known as Billy Bob.
Yes. If Napier's winning, this is nobody cares.
Oh, it's like, what are you supposed to do? There are no rules in the NIL. This is the Wild Wild West.
But you're losing.
Go to Miami.
But you're losing. 4 calls. 4 calls. All right. So the ruling came down yesterday. I know you wrote about it this morning. So give us
the ruling was finalized when the SEC and the former members of the Pac-12 who voted together last night made it official among the Power 5 programs and the NCAA Board of Governors to accept or to present a settlement offer to settle the House suit, the House versus NCAA lawsuit, and a couple others that are seeking for back pay for athletes who were not in line to get NIL money. Now, you ask yourself, how could that even be possible? I don't know, because I don't know what the limitations or the time frame is going to be. But if you try to go back and pay everybody, there's not enough money in North America to pay Cam Newton what he was worth for 5 months in Auburn, Alabama. So I don't know how far back it's going to go. I don't know how many different athletes. I don't know if it's going to be a universal check. Who knows? It could be like Steve Martin in The Jerk when everybody sued him for the OptiGrab that made everybody cockeyed, and he had to write like $1.08 check to everybody who sued him. So I don't know if it's going to work out that way, but here's what I do know. I firmly believe that yesterday is one of the 4 biggest days in professional sports, and college athletics are now professional sports in North America ever. Jackie Robinson crossing the color barrier, Title IX, Kurt Flood winning his free agency, and yesterday. Because college football and college basketball especially will never be the same. It'll never, ever be the same. There will be tens of millions of dollars shared with the athletes at Power 5 programs. There will be tens of millions of dollars in checks written from schools like UTC and Furman and MTSU, money they can't afford, into this big kitty over the next 10 years to cover the revenue share, the back pay, all of these things. Now, details are scant. So all the questions we have about taxes and allocation and what does Title IX have to play into this, because you can't possibly pay the starting quarterback at Tennessee the same you're going to pay the backup punter or even the starting 2 guard on the Lady Vols basketball team. So how does Title IX play? We don't know a lot of those things because the people who are being presented these settlements, the people who brought these lawsuits to bear, have 5 months to approve them. But I do know, and from what I've read, the NCAA is hoping to enact this by the fall of 2025. So we're talking 15 months from now. Next school year, we're going to have if the NCAA has its way, the lawsuit settled and a revenue share model in place that they hope will not open them up to further lawsuits. But some of the details it will have, you're talking about salary caps. You're talking about revenue sharing. You're talking about potential to, again, prevent lawsuits. They may do away with scholarship limitations and put it just on here's how much you can spend for your roster and go accordingly to that. I mean, the ramifications of this are so far reaching that we can't see a lion's share of this. But here are my two beliefs about the people who this is going to serve beyond the athletes themselves, or two most people in my mind who get the most focus beyond the athletes and the administrators who are going to have to figure out ways to fund this. First is the true football coaches who are difference makers in play calling. Nick Saban could have coached the Alabama Crimson Tide for most of the last decade from a skybox. They had that big of a talent advantage. This, in a lot of ways, is going to level a lot of the playing field. If Nick Saban only had $22 million to spend, and that's all he could spend, and Hugh Freeze had the same amount, Hugh Freeze is going to get closer to a balance in terms of five-star. So the true play callers, if the talent gap gets closer, the divide between really good play callers is going to get greater because it gives you a definite advantage. The final thing I'll say on this is Mark Emmert is the biggest son of a bitch, worst leadership official in the history of professional North American sports. I challenge you to name somebody worse. 3 years ago, these lawsuits were asking for $5,700 per athlete. Do the math, you jackass, and think about what in the hell you have cost those of us who love college sports and the unknown future. And why? Because you are the world's most humanized ostrich, and you put your head in the sand ever since Ed O'Bannon filed a lawsuit, and you decided to think, you know what? We're bulletproof, and we'll just pretend like it's not there. Shame on you, Mark Emmert. You should return every check they gave you.
Yes. Well done and well said by Mr. Greeson. All right, this is Texas Longhorns Day, but a few other items to cover before we get there. Yesterday, DraftKings came out with week 1 lines on every game, so I'm just going to share with you the SEC teams whose lines were not out yet for week 1. Oklahoma opens on a Friday, August 30th. They are minus 39.5 at home to Temple. We've already discussed.
Wait, I know you got a bunch of them to run off, but we did have a little more news, and that made me think of it this week.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Big Ten's doing 9 Friday night games. It sounds like the SEC's putting their toe in Friday night waters. And granted, that's on the first weekend where all days are open.
Right.
Part of me is a traditionalist, old school newspaper guy who cut his teeth covering high school football is a little uneasy with that because I love the romance of Friday nights and you go to your neighborhood game and the lights are on. As a gambler, more please.
Yes.
More meaningful, watchable, big name games on as many nights that you can get these kids healthy enough to play. More please.
Yeah. Now I wonder if the SEC will end up doing that. The thing is like a lot of fan bases – have to work on Friday. They want it to be on Saturday. And so that's why the SEC doesn't get involved in the Thursday night games. So I don't know if SEC will want to go Friday night. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know either, but Friday night's at least better for Thursday for the travel.
Sure.
And it also, I don't know if the SEC is going to have a choice. If the Big Ten, its only main competition in this whole new arms race, of what is a power 2, the next 2, and then everybody else scrambling for the scraps from Longshank's table is if the Big Ten makes some serious coin with 9 Friday night games in that portal, I don't see how the SEC can refuse. Now
and they can stagger the times because Big Ten, it could be at Washington or at USC and be in the late slot. and the SEC game could be in the early slot.
And make no mistake, this screams of some behind closed doors whispering of, hey, Rutgers, you want to stay in here and get these checks? On September 27th, you're going to Washington to play on a Friday night. Pack your bags on Wednesday. Hey, Vandy, you want to stay? You want to keep cashing these checks? You're going to Austin, Texas for an 8 p.m. kick on a Friday night. Best of luck with that.
Yes. So I hear you on the gambling front. Yes, standalone games. Standalone games, sign me up. Because we miss so many games that we only get to see the highlights just because during a specific time slot.
And our friends at Bet Online should embrace that with an SEC and have a ticker in game. Next drive going to be a touchdown. Yes, plus 350. No, minus 285.
Yes, I concur wholeheartedly. All right, so back to these SEC lines. South Carolina minus 17 at home to Old Dominion. Kentucky minus 24 at home to Southern Miss. Texas minus 36.5 at home to Colorado State. We've already talked about how Florida is plus 2 to Miami. The Vatek line, I think we talked about this game a couple weeks ago. I love Vatek in week 1. I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago when it was 10.5. I noticed within the last week it had moved to 11. It's now 11.5. But I like the Hokies all the way up to 14. But hopefully, I have not been able to get it. My accounts don't have games of the year up yet. Well, maybe, with DraftKings coming up, maybe they will post some week 1 lines here shortly, but I hope so. But anywho, I would like the Hokies up to 14. They are up to 11.5 right now at Vandy in week 1. Alabama minus 32.5 against Western Kentucky at Bryant-Denny to start the Kalen DeBoer era. Now we've had this one out there. A&M minus 1 at home to Notre Dame. We've also discussed how LSU's minus 6 to USC. That game is in Vegas. I will be in Vegas celebrating my 50th birthday, and I might be going to that game.
Let me ask you something, Brian. Well, first, happy early birthday.
Thanks, sir.
We still got
still ways off.
But all right, it was pretty much a universal rule in our conversations through the last handful of years in the various gambling avenues and communication platforms we've shared. We always loved Nick Saban in the first half, and it probably paid 70% over the last half decade or so. You always loved Nick Saban not covering in a money game because he'd be laying 48 to UTC and win 49-6. It was clockwork.
Oh, there's a great stat out there. I used to tweet it all the time. It was like when they lay 45 or more during the Saban era, and they were like 15 games below 500 against the spread.
Against Western Kentucky at home, Kalen DeBoer desperately trying to put a good foot forward. I would be comfortable laying that number up to 40.
Yeah, I gotta get my magazines and see what Western Kentucky looks like before I commit to that. But I like your thought process there. He wants to get.
He does not need 27-24. He does not need the Gus Malzahn Jacksonville State convert on 4th down to get into field goal range to win.
Right. Or I remember Ole Miss lost to Jacksonville State, or Muschamp lost to Georgia Southern. Not in his week 1 debut, but yes. No, I hear you on all of that. All right, before we get to the Longhorns, couple more items, or if you've got any more, let me know. I just wanted to point out a big get for Mark Byington and Vandy in the portal, and apparently, or clearly, the rumors and reports of Vanderbilt investing a lot of money into the basketball program are accurate, because I was told that Michigan State transfer A.J. Hoggard got $800,000 to go to Vandy, and that is a big commit for them. He's been the 2-year starter for Izzo at point guard for Michigan State. He's a grad transfer. He has played more than 100 meaningful games for Michigan State in his career. Last year, averaged 10.7 points per game, 5.2 assists, 3.1 rebounds, and 1.4 steals per game, and 78.7% free throw shooter. And Florida wanted him. Florida didn't have a true point guard, but I think we have spread our NIL money around where I don't think we could match $800K. And Georgia was also in the mix for this guy. So Vandy won a recruiting / bidding war over Georgia and Florida last week. And so that's a good sign for Vandy hoops.
It is a good sign. And I tell you, there's going to be some sneaky teams who show up and you go, hey, they used to stink. And if you're somebody like Tennessee, and I know they've added some pieces, but they had to replace so much production. And Zakai Ziegler's back, and yes, that's a great piece to build around. But they're going to go from being a top 1 or 2 seed to really the middle of the pack when you start looking around. Georgia got a lot better with a top 10 kid out of Florida and another top 50 recruit. Florida returns a lot. We've talked about Auburn. We know Mississippi State's got some dudes, including the gunner, the freshman, who you and I both love his offensive skill set. Now, one of the teams that, Hubbard, that the recent interviews I've seen, it looks like Mark Sears is 100% invested in the draft process. Now, he may get some bad news between now and later this summer, but every interview I've seen said he's not even thinking about school. He's 100% in on the draft.
Well, I looked at the updated mock drafts coming out of the combine. So this was like 2 days ago, and I looked at 3 prominent ones, including ESPN's. I think the other one was Bleacher Report, and the other one was NBADraft.net. And he's not even listed as being drafted in the second round. So I'm not giving up yet.
I know. I completely understand that. Yeah. You also have to wonder, as many pieces as they added, and it's one of those things that the music can stop on you sometimes, and you don't have a chair.
Oh, you're thinking his stock may never get higher than it is right this second.
Not only his stock may never get higher than it is right this second, what happens if he and Alabama had a heart-to-heart and he said, Coach, I really feel like I'm going? Well, Oates has then got to go replenish his roster. You can't stand around waiting at the altar with your fingers crossed that she's going to show up 5 hours later. I mean, so if he goes and spends all his NIL money, replenishes his roster, which he did, and Oates, and then Sears calls back and says, hey, this isn't going as good as I thought. Well, son, I may not have a spot for you at the money you're thinking.
Let's don't do that, Coach Oates. Let's don't do that.
No, he comes back their top 3. He comes back their top 3.
Undoubtedly. So the only or 2 others. So Vin Allen Lubin, the former Vandy guy, he signed or committed to North Carolina yesterday. Huge get for UNC. And then Auburn got another player, an SMU transfer. I'm getting there. Here we go. Jaheim Hudson. Now, I didn't look up the stats for his whole career, but not a whole lot last year. 5.4 points per game, 3.4 rebounds. So just a role player, I would assume. Did you read up on him? Huh?
No, I have not. Okay, a lot of people don't know this, Brian, but my given name is Jaheim.
Oh, right. Outstanding. That was great. All right, on to the Texas Longhorns. Okay, Dokie Smokey. Let's review the betting items on the Longhorns menu from our good friends at Bet Online, which has 3 of their games listed in their games of the year. The Longhorns -4.5 at Michigan in week 2, -9.5 in the Red River game against Oklahoma on October 12th. And so this Georgia trip to Austin, not ideal coming off the big rivalry game with Oklahoma, but it is at home for Texas, and Texas is plus 1.5 at a minus 115 price. BetOnline has Texas minus 500 to make the playoff, which is tied for the third shortest odds to make the 12-team CFP. Georgia has the most expensive odds, minus 900, Ohio State minus 800, and Oregon shares the minus 500 price with Texas. To win the CFP, Texas is plus 600 at BetOnline, and Georgia's the plus 325 chalk, and Ohio State has the second shortest odds at plus 375. To win the SEC, Texas is at plus 310, the second shortest odds behind Georgia, the plus 190 chalk, and Quinn Ewers, the QB, has the second shortest odds to win the Heisman. Obviously, we talked about Carson Beck being the favorite at plus 850. Quinn Ewers has plus 950 odds, followed by Dylan Gabriel at Oregon at 10-1. And the season win total from BetOnline for Texas is 10.5, shaded heavily to the under at minus 165. But if you think Texas is going to go 11-1 or better, you get a nice plus 135 return at BetOnline. Now, some other books have a couple of other games, and FanDuel has totals for 3 of Texas's games. The Texas-Michigan game has a total of 48.5. The Texas-Oklahoma game, which has been very high scoring lately, has a total of 60.5. And the Georgia-Texas game has a total of 55.5. And then, oh gosh, did I put it in that? So we have also from DraftKings, Texas is minus 4 at Texas A&M. And that's the regular season finale for both teams as that rivalry gets going. First time since 2011, I believe. And 2 weeks prior to that, Texas is minus 16.5 to Arkansas, and that game is in Fayetteville. All right. Before we get into the schedule, I can go over a few other facts, stats, but I'll let you have the floor for a second.
Well, one, I think there are a few things that kind of jump out to me. One, I think Quinn Ewers is vastly overvalued to be the second favorite at the Heisman. You lose that many difference makers around you. Both of your 3 out of your wide receiver core. The running back was the first running back picked. You lose and I know it's an individual award, but you're going to have to be on the cusp of the playoff to get invited anyway. And I've got some questions about this Texas team that I know they're talented, but returning starters is not the same thing as returning stars. And they lost a lot of star power. And anybody who watched them play more than a quarter knew that Byron Murphy was the guts of that football team. So, and he's now going to be NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. So
not playing for the Atlanta Falcons.
Of course, not playing for the Atlanta Falcons. We drafted a backup quarterback 8 overall because, by God, Falcons going to Falcon. Hey, don't tell me I can't Falcon. I'm a Falcon.
This is true.
So, we can go game by game. I think Quinn Ewers is exceedingly overvalued. I think there is no bigger lottery ticket bet in any of the conversations we're going to have in May and June than trying to peg what's going to happen in Texas, Michigan. Since
right.
they lost together, they lost 24 draft picks. So, nobody has any idea. Sarkisian and the new coach in Michigan have no idea what they got week 2. So that game of the year line should have just been a question mark.
Right.
And you name it, we'll give you odds on it. So
I think Michigan's only got 1 returning starter on offense. I heard that. Wow. I'm sure
they had 14 guys drafted, but they had 20 invited to the combine.
Wow.
So
Wow.
they probably have 20 plus dudes off that team.
Or they're going to be in training camps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Texas didn't lose that much. And here's how Texas did replenish. So they have, according to the 247 Sports Composite, they have the number five overall recruiting class, number 6 in terms of transfer specific guys, 18 of the freshmen coming in, 18 of the 22 coming in were early enrollees and were at spring practice, so that's obviously good. It's 33 total commits, 11 transfers, 22 from high school, and 18 early enrollees. Of those, 5 5-stars, 24 stars, 8 3-stars. And one of the 5-stars is a receiver, Ryan Wingo. And, so Ewers lost a ton of his wide receiver talent, but they have a 1 5-star transfer, 5 4-star transfers. The 5-star transfer is Isaiah Bond, who Alabama fans are obviously familiar with. He had 48 catches, 668 yards, 4 touchdowns for the Tide last year. They also get a wide receiver and special teams guy in Silas Bolden from Oregon State. He had 54 catches, 746 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 rushing touchdowns and a punt return for a touchdown for the Beavers last year. They got a 4-star wide receiver transfer, Matthew Golden from Houston, who was limited to 9 games last year because of injury, but had 38 catches, 404 yards, 6 touchdowns. And finally, Amari Niblack from Alabama, tight end, 20 catches, 327 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. So they tried to get Ewers some new targets. Obviously, that'll take some time to develop, chemistry, etc. But they've got some dudes coming. Go ahead.
They do have dudes coming, and that's important. And I know those guys can play, and they're always going to recruit well. And Sarkisian has recruited well, and the roster should fully have expectations of the next guy up mentality that coaches love to talk about. But you lose Xavier Worthy, who was historically fast. I mean, so he goes round 1 to Kansas City, and you want to talk about guys who extend the field. Check. Jonathan Brooks was the first running back picked. I expect C.J. Baxter to be very good, but Jonathan Brooks was the first running back drafted. And then you go Adonai Mitchell, who was probably their most reliable wide receiver. And, I mean, I think it's to a place now, and we were talking about Quinn Ewers, and one of the reasons I think his Heisman odds are overinflated is they're asking a hell of a lot of Isaiah Bond, who, in my mind, if you're talking about SEC to SEC transfers in this offseason, I think the 3 most critical are Isaiah Bond, Trevor Etienne, and Walter Nolan, who went from Texas A&M to Ole Miss. So, and Isaiah Bond is right there because they're going to count on him to be wide receiver 1 as soon as he walks in, as soon as we get to Labor Day.
Yep. They also got a 5-star wide receiver from high school, Ryan Wingo. I don't, whether he's going to be, ready to contribute.
In relation to Johnny Wingo, could he be his Huckleberry?
Not sure. I'm not sure. We cannot confirm or deny that at the moment. All right, we ready to get into the schedule?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Colorado State at home, win. I'm going to say a win at Michigan, but, I mean, it is going to be 100,000 people. It's not a layup by any stretch, but I'll say win at Michigan. What about you?
I concur with that. I mean, if we're being honest, because with as much as Mississippi State lost and the turmoil in Starkville, they're 5-0 going into the Red River, right?
Absolutely, yeah. UTSA and ULM at home and Mississippi State at home, 5-0, and then an open date going to Red River, 100%.
And
they're favored by 9.5.
In a lot of ways, your over/under bet is set between October 12 and October 20.
100%. And you got to get to 11 if you like the over. So you only got 1 loss you can have.
And I'm telling you, I tell you what I honestly believe. I think Kirby is frothing those boys for a trip to Austin the way Saban frothed that team a decade or so ago when they went to Athens and crucified Georgia.
Yep. And Georgia gets a layup the week before it plays Texas at home to Mississippi State, whereas Texas is coming off its biggest rivalry game that, is going to be always going to be a physical battle. And even though Texas is favored by 9.5, I mean, it'll be a close game. I mean, Texas could still cover, but it's going to be a very competitive game. So Georgia is going to the spot definitely favors Georgia.
It does, but to counter that, and you and I are, I mean, I think Georgia runs the table. I think people are undervaluing Georgia, if that's even possible. And Kirby, you have my permission to use that.
Shock the world again, Kirby.
Yeah, we're going to shock the world with preseason number 2, baby. Here's the other part. Other than that trip to Ann Arbor for $100,000, Texas spends a whole lot of time in Lone Star State, brother.
Yeah, they do.
That's home in Colorado. That's home against San Antonio. That's home against La Monroe. That's home against Miss State. That's the Red River rivalry in Dallas, which I know they split it down the middle, but it still ain't that far from home. And then home against Georgia.
And when they do leave, it's Vanderbilt. And Arkansas is not as close as you can get out of state, or other than Oklahoma, I guess. But they don't play Oklahoma and Oklahoma. So
they leave the state of Texas 3 times this year.
They go to Michigan, Arkansas, and Vandy. That schedule works.
I mean, you're right. The timing of Red River and then Georgia coming to town, which man, yeah, I'm surprised ESPN didn't finagle that a little better, because that could very well be back-to-back game day with Texas following the Texas Longhorns.
It very well could, yes. So I'm going to say they beat Oklahoma and lose to Georgia, and I'm going to guess you're on the same page?
No, I completely am on the same page, and which then takes us to the lottery ticket game back in week 2, because I think the rest of that's a cakewalk. Especially if they get to Vanderbilt with 1 loss and they're playing for a spot in the SEC championship game and/or the playoff. I think that I don't think any of the last 5, especially the only one athletically is if Kentucky, but that's not even close, and that game's in Austin.
You think they're going to punk Texas A&M in front of 100,000?
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Okay. So, okay. Breaking news: Greeson loves Texas -4 at A&M.
Get on it now, because you're going to have to give up. You're going to have to give up double that when we get there.
Okay. Let's see. May 24th. Greeson. I'm not going to just hand them that game. I mean, you think they're going to punk A&M in that rivalry game, huh? Okay. A&M's got a good.
A&M lost.
What? I know they lost, but Connor Wegman's a good quarterback. I picked Texas to win for sure, but it could be a competitive game. No,
I mean maybe, but
I love it. You love that game -4. I like it.
No, I do. This game has the Texas, the Lone Star feel of the Yellerhammer State when Auburn fans try to talk themselves into an overmatched Auburn team just because Alabama's coming down there. We're going to play them close. Crowd's going to be in it. Shut up. They got better players.
But what about last year? They had better players last year.
Yeah, and they still found a way to win.
They did. They didn't cover, though. Did not cover. So, all right, we both agree. We like the we like the over 11-1, and you can get plus 130.
I've talked myself in the over. I was fully prepared to go lean towards under, but I don't think you look at the schedule and it says Texas at Oklahoma, and you think, oh, tough. Well, that's in Dallas. So, I mean, yeah, it's a rivalry game, and there's been some strange things that happen, but again, Oklahoma lost their quarterback.
Yeah, and they're in revenge mode because Oklahoma won it last year, so they owe them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so that plus 1.5 at home to Georgia is their only underdog spot of the year. That's it.
Yeah.
They're heavily favored in every other game, with the exception of at Michigan and at A&M, which are 4, and it's 4.5 at Michigan. But I mean, I feel they have an easier time at Michigan than A&M. We'll see. I mean, A&M will have a whole season to figure out what they got. All right, so we both like the over.
Yeah, we both like the over. And you were talking about one of the things. The only thing that scares me is not the talent, because I think they're going to replenish a lot of the talent. And they, as you noted, they were really aggressive and really successful in the portal. I'm curious how Sarkisian is going to handle, with the exception of the out-of-conference games. And, I mean, man, they got a great draw. You get Mississippi State, Vandy, and Arkansas, maybe the 3 worst teams in the league.
Yeah. I mean, Texas got a great draw, and Missouri and Ole Miss got great draws. I can't wait to break down Missouri because they have they're going to be good, and boy, does that schedule work. But I got a question here, and but just because, we don't have the divisions anymore, so we're on new ground. I mean, I'm sure I could Google it and figure this out real quick, but what if Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas all go 11-1, and let's say Georgia's loss is at Ole Miss, Texas's loss is at home to Georgia, and Ole Miss is so in other words, Georgia would own the tiebreaker with Texas, but Ole Miss would own the tiebreaker with, we got a 3-way tie. How does that going to work?
The way they've done it in the past was by rankings, and considering the way things have gone and the way things are pointed towards,
Ole Miss is not going to have many high-quality wins, so I bet they would get screwed if they go toward the ranking. Georgia and Texas, I would guess, would be – well, I don't know. Ole Miss gets a late-season win over Georgia. Yeah, well, I shouldn't have brought it up when we don't know the answer. We'll figure it out and let you know next week.
It is going to certainly be confusing, confounding, and confused and absolutely convoluted. But don't get married to this format, because I think the Big Ten and the SEC are, especially now that these leagues have expanded, it wouldn't shock me if this thing lasts 1 year. And if they don't each get 3 teams in the playoffs, which they're planning on, they're going to reconfigure something to make certain they're in the best possible place to have 3, if not 4, contenders every single season, because the stakes are too great.
Yeah, it'll be the last few years have been interesting, and it's going to stay interesting, and there's more changes coming. All right. Wrapping things up here, I do have an opinion on the total tomorrow for Boston, Indiana, in the NBA playoffs. I've hit the over in back-to-back games. Now, Halliburton's questionable. That does impact the scoring for Indiana. But I'm confident TJ McConnell will still have them playing at a frenetic pace if Halliburton can't go. He's questionable. So I still like it over 222.5. There's actually a 222 at Circa. Our friends at BetLaw Online have the Celtics -7 with a total at 222.5. So I like it over. If Halliburton was upgraded, which, that's a hamstring. Who knows? I would lean Indiana +7, but you will see on that. I kind of lean Indiana +7 regardless, actually. Do you have any NBA thoughts or anything bettable this weekend? College baseball, SEC, anything?
Well, the SEC baseball tournament is, I mean, you want to talk about that's like that's like preseason for the teams that already know they're going to be hosting regionals and potential super regionals.
They're not even throwing their best pitchers.
I mean, goodness no. Tennessee called, want to know if my arm was loose, and I said no. I got to do the podcast on Southeastern 14. I mean, I got people dependent on me. I can't come up there. I can't come to Hoover and pitch for y'all. I mean, no, the chicken wing's ready, but I got things to do. I think I think the game 1, game 2 thing tonight in Minnesota applies. I think Dallas is quite comfortable with a split, getting home court. I think Minnesota ratchets up the defensive intensity. I could see Luka resting a little more tonight. I see Timberwolves big. We're on a heater, boys and girls.
Oh, you heated back up this week.
A heater side. I mean, I feel like I win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, lose 2, win 1. I'm taking strides to get back to plus 90 units, but the Phillies are on a Jaden Daniels LSU over type of run right now. They are, I think they're 16-3 in the month of May. They are winning almost all these games by more than the 1+5 run, so you're getting plus money. Their starting pitching has been staggering with Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger Suarez. And Bryce Harper is probably going to hit 400 with 10 jacks in the month of May. And right now, they are a juggernaut feasting on a weaker schedule. They've got the best record through 50 games of any major league team since Seattle in 2001. They were 36-14 going into an off day yesterday.
And let's see. Where are they on the board here? So tonight they are minus 200 at Colorado, and let's see what they are on the run line. How do I get to the run line here?
And that total is going to have to be lofty unless because I think Zach Wheeler.
11.
Yeah, 11. In Colorado and the way they're mashing the baseball. But
so I'm not sure about the run line price, but all right. Thank you to Bet Online. Thank you to our good friends at Southeastern 14. Thanks to Max and Blake for the edit. Closing shots.
Just want to make certain Mark Emmert's still coming over to the house for Memorial Day cookout. And you can read all my stuff at timesfreepress.com and get the afternoon Jay's Plays email. Sign up for it there. My picks of the night, picks into the weekend. And let's go Kyle Larson. I'm going to put a little on that in the Indy 500. How about that?
Oh, there we go.
Give me a little betting interest on the Indy 500 come Sunday. Got family in town, man.
There's the play. All right, great stuff. So we do have the spring meetings in Destin, I believe, are next week. So I'm sure we'll have some news coming out of there. We'll discuss next Friday. Do we have? I don't even know what team we're going to do next Friday.
If you're hunky dory about Missouri, let's do Missouri.
There it is. Next Friday is Missouri Tigers week. For Jay Greeson, I'm Brian Edwards. You've been listening to Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson here at Southeastern 14. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next Friday.